So, this happened maybe 2 years ago when I was trying to sell this electric scooter I barely used. It was one of those higher-end models, super sleek, fast, and I dropped something like $550 on it when I bought it new. Anyway, I put it up on Facebook Marketplace, and within like an hour or two, people started messaging me. One dude in particular stood out. He hit me up pretty quick, said he was really interested and asked if he could swing by and check it out. I asked him straight up how serious he was, and he hit me with a very, "Okay, cool." I kept it in the garage at the time, so I let him know he could stop by if he was ready to take it. We agreed on the full asking price, and I gave him my address. I live in a pretty normal house in a quiet part of Spring Lake, Tennessee with my wife, nothing fancy. He shows up around 6 p.m., just as the sun's starting to dip a little. I head out to the driveway to meet him. Can't remember the guy's name for the life of me, but I remember thinking he seemed normal. Not sketchy or anything. I had the garage door open and the scooter was just sitting out front, already charged up. So I turn it on, let him see it light up, even gave him a quick demo of the throttle and brakes. It purred like a kitten, no issues. He nods, checks it out, walks around it like he's pretending to be a mechanic or something. Then, after like 5 solid minutes of silence, he looks up and goes, "Yeah, I think I gotta sleep on it." I was like, "Dude, you told me you were ready to buy it today." I didn't say that out loud though. Instead, I just reminded him he said he was very serious, and he kind of shrugs and says something about not getting paid till next week, which, let's be real, usually means I'm ghosting you. So I just told him, "All right, man, no worries," and waved him off. He left, I rolled the scooter back into the garage, shut the door, and went inside. That was that. Or so I thought. Fast forward to like 10:30, maybe closer to 11 p.m. My wife and I were winding down in the living room, about to head to bed. It was one of those calm nights where the neighborhood is dead quiet. Then we both hear this weird noise outside. Kinda metallic, but muffled. I paused whatever we were watching and got up to peek through the window. Couldn't see much, it was dark, and the porch light didn't reach far. Then we heard it again, louder this time. Still couldn't figure out what the hell it was. So I headed to the front door and slowly opened it. I could tell whatever the sound was, it was coming from somewhere out near the driveway. So I crack open the front door, and right then, I catch this subtle rustling coming from the side bushes that line the path by our garage. You know the kind. Scraggly, half-dead little shrubs that are only still there because ripping them out sounds like a weekend I don't want. I step out onto the porch and call out like, "Hello? Anyone there?" Nothing. Just dead silence. No frogs, no crickets, nothing. Which honestly made it feel creepier. Now, at this point, normal people would probably backtrack into the house and call someone. But me? Nope. My lizard brain kicked in, and I decided to wander toward the noise. Genius move, right? It was pitch black out there. Barely any light hitting the garage side since that motion sensor floodlight had been busted for months. I crept forward, trying not to crunch too loudly on the gravel. The bushes were right up against this side gate between our place and the neighbors, and as I got close, I noticed something weird. The side access door to my garage was cracked open. That door is never open. So now my heart's doing drum solos in my chest. But do I go back inside? Nah. I walk right up to it and push it open like I'm in a low-budget horror movie. I peek inside. It's super dark, but I could make out the shape of the scooter still sitting there. Then, and I swear this happened in slow motion, I see some shadow shift in the back corner of the garage. And then this dude just starts walking toward me, not even running at first. I instantly stepped back and backed out like nope, nope, nope. And just as I turned to bolt toward the house, I heard the guy sprint in the opposite direction behind me. I spun around, and yeah, it was him. The same guy who just wanted to check it out earlier that evening. He took off down the road, bolted across the street, and disappeared into the dark. It hit me all at once. Dude was definitely trying to steal the scooter. Probably thought we'd be asleep by then. I rushed back inside, told my wife what just happened. She freaked, obviously, and called the cops. While we waited, I hauled the scooter into the living room. Not ideal decor, but I wasn't leaving it outside again. The police showed up maybe 15 minutes later, asked a few questions, did a little flashlight sweep of the area, but the guy was long gone. And here's the kicker. When I went to show them his Facebook profile, it had vanished. Deleted or fake, who knows? Total ghost. I never heard from him again, but that whole night seriously messed with my head. Easily the sketchiest thing that's ever happened to me on Facebook Marketplace. So, not too long ago, I upgraded my ride. Finally got something that didn't sound like a dying lawnmower every time I hit the gas. That meant it was time to get rid of my old car. I'd had it for years, bought it secondhand when I was broke in college, and let's just say it had personality. I figured I'd try Facebook Marketplace since everyone kept saying it was better than Craigslist, which honestly always gave me meet me in this dark alley vibes. I threw up a listing with some pics and the usual runs fine, needs some love type of description. Got a couple of bites in the first day or two. Mostly people asking stuff like, what's the lowest you'll take? Before ghosting entirely. Pretty standard. Then I got a message from some dude named Terry. He seemed genuinely interested and said he was looking to buy something ASAP. We chatted a bit. He asked the usual questions, and eventually we agreed to meet up later that night so he could check it out in person. I suggested the parking lot of this big strip mall about 10 minutes from my place in Brookdale. It had a bunch of stores, a PetSmart, a Ross, one of those weird off-brand dollar stores, and the back lot was always super empty in the evenings. Figured it'd be chill and public enough. We settled on 8:30 p.m. Not ideal, but Terry said he worked late and was really eager to see it that night. I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And planned to be there a little early just in case. So I pull in around 8:20, shoot Terry a message letting him know I'm there, and park in the back row under one of the few working lights. Then I wait. And wait. 8:30 rolls by, nothing. I check my phone, no reply. I text again like, hey man, you close? Still nothing. I wait until about 9, getting more annoyed by the minute. It was one of those annoying cold but not quite freezing nights too, so I was just sitting there stewing in a hoodie, thinking I'd been ghosted. Eventually I gave up, drove off, and headed back home. My house was on this really quiet little street, like the kind where you might see one car an hour, tops, and that's usually a neighbor coming back from the grocery store. So I'm cruising down the road, maybe 5 minutes from my driveway, and suddenly I notice these headlights coming up behind me real fast, like way faster than anyone normally drives on my street. I thought maybe someone was just in a hurry, whatever. I pull into my driveway expecting them to just blow past me, but then their car turns in too, right behind me. So my driveway's not exactly a runway. It's short, but kind of wide-ish. Like, I can barely fit 2 cars front to back without feeling like I'm about to roll into my neighbor's rose bushes. That night, my new car was chilling in the garage, and I was driving the old one, the one I'd been trying to sell. So when this mystery car pulled in right behind me, I had nowhere to go. Their headlights were flooding through my rear window, super bright, and something about the whole thing just gave me that gut-level nope feeling. At first, I was totally confused. I wasn't expecting anyone, and it was late. But then this dumb, hopeful part of me thought, maybe that's Terry? Maybe he followed me home because he still wanted the car or something? Yeah, I know. dumb. I couldn't really see much through the blinding lights, so I turned the wheel a little to the right, thinking I might try and back out or loop around. That's when I noticed the car behind me mimic the move, like, almost instantly. That's when the nope feeling turned into full-on alarm bells. I panicked. I didn't know what they wanted, and I wasn't about to wait to find out. The other car started honking. This sharp, aggressive honk like they were trying to scare me or rush me or, I don't know, intimidate me? But I didn't recognize the vehicle at all. Didn't recognize the lights, the shape, nothing. Whoever this was, it wasn't someone I knew. So I cranked my wheel hard, floored it, and basically did this half-baked move to avoid hitting the garage door. My tires squealed a bit, and I just barely missed clipping the edge of the house. I tried to whip around in a U-turn, but the driveway's layout meant I ended up cutting through part of my front yard instead, tore up some grass and probably scared the crap out of the squirrels. As I did that, the other car started backing up and swerving like it was trying to stay with me. That's when I knew. This wasn't some lost Uber or confused neighbor. They were definitely after me. Somehow, I managed to pull out and get down the street. I didn't waste a second, just floored it toward the end of the block. Of course, that other car followed, headlights still glued to my back bumper. I started weaving through some nearby neighborhoods I kind of knew, hoping to lose them in the maze of sleepy houses and parked cars. After a few turns, I spotted a bigger road up ahead and gunned it toward the lights. I stayed on that main road for a while, switching lanes, taking random turns, and trying to blend in with other traffic. I didn't even realize until maybe 5 or 10 minutes later that the car was gone. No clue when they peeled off. I'd been too focused on just driving and not dying. Eventually, I circled back to my place, super cautious, and made sure I wasn't being followed. The other car never showed up again, but man, I still get the creeps thinking about it. I'm like 90% sure it was Terry, or whatever his real name was. I think he messaged me just to figure out where I lived, maybe wanted to steal the car or mug me or something. But the weirdest part? When I checked Facebook later that night, I found out he'd already blocked me. Total vanish. No profile pic, no messages, nothing. Just gone. I tried reporting it to Facebook Marketplace, but let's be real, it's not like they can do much. After that whole mess, I haven't listed a single thing on there. Nope. Never again. So yeah, this happened to me a while back. I'd say around 6 years ago now. And honestly, it's stuck with me ever since. I, 28F at the time, was in desperate need of a car. My old Honda was basically on life support, so I started browsing Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace for something used and cheap. You know, typical broke 20-something vibes. Anyway, after about a week of scrolling through sketchy listings and weirdly worded posts, I came across this one sedan that actually looked decent. Not too old, clean title, and the price wasn't ridiculous. I messaged the seller, a guy named Aaron, who seemed chill enough over text. We set up a time to meet so I could check it out. Aaron said he'd meet me at this gas station about 10 minutes from my place in Greenville, Kentucky. He described himself as a big guy with a dark beard. And yeah, that was accurate. I figured a gas station was public enough to be safe, so I drove over around 6:45 p.m. in my beat-up Civic that coughed like it was about to die. It was a quiet Thursday evening, not many people around. At around 7, I saw the car roll in and park near the edge of the lot. It looked just like the pics, so I walked over to meet Aaron. He greeted me and started pointing out stuff about the car. New tires, recent oil change, all that jazz. After chatting for a couple minutes, he asked if I wanted to take it for a spin. Obviously, yes. But here's where things started to feel a little off. Instead of handing me the keys or switching seats, he goes, "Hop in the passenger seat. I'll drive first and show you how it handles. Then you can try it." I didn't really think much of it in the moment. I was more focused on whether the car was as good as he claimed. So I got in. We pulled out of the gas station and started cruising down some back roads. At first, he was just giving me the rundown, how the brakes were recently replaced, how the AC worked great, etc. But like 5 minutes in, I started noticing we were getting further and further away from the main roads. Lots of trees, fewer streetlights, and none of it looked familiar. And the guy? He started going quiet. At first, he was talking normally, but then his responses started getting shorter, like one sentence every couple minutes. That's when my gut started buzzing. I realized I had no clue where I was anymore. I tried to keep it casual and asked, "Hey, so can I try driving now?" He kind of brushed it off with, Yeah, just one more minute." That one more minute turned into another 3 or 4 of dead silence. I kept glancing around, trying to recognize anything, but it was all woods and pitch-black roads. Finally, he slowed down and pulled over. My heart was thumping at this point. No cars in sight, just total quiet. I figured he was finally switching seats, but as we stopped, I noticed this narrow dirt trail leading into the trees, barely visible off the shoulder of the road. And that's when I really started freaking out inside. So, we're parked there on this quiet stretch of road, and I'm already on edge. But then I spot something that made my stomach drop. There was this dark-colored SUV tucked into that sketchy little dirt trail I mentioned, totally blacked out with its headlights off. Real horror movie vibes. As soon as we came to a stop, both front doors of the SUV popped open. No sound, just the click and swing of doors. I sat there frozen for a second, trying to piece together what was happening. Aaron suddenly turned toward me, and with a weirdly calm voice said, "Hey, hand me your phone." Instant goosebumps. I kind of stammered, "Why?" Well, out of the corner of my eye, I noticed people, like 3 or 4 of them, starting to walk toward us from the SUV. They were still a ways off, probably 40-50 feet, but it was too dark to see anything beyond outlines. My heart was racing. Aaron started saying something else. I have no clue what. My brain just blocked it out. Because the second I saw those people moving toward us, I knew something was very wrong, and I wasn't about to stick around to find out what. I flung the passenger door open and booked it. Like full-on panic sprint straight into the trees. No plan, just instinct. I heard a bunch of yelling behind me. Male voices, quick footsteps, chaos. Someone was definitely chasing me. But I didn't look back. I didn't want to know how close they were. Branches slapped my face, thorns tore at my legs, but I just kept running. Somewhere along the way, I fumbled my phone out of my hoodie pocket and blindly hit 911 without even checking if the call went through. I kept yelling, "I'm being chased, I'm in the woods, please help," while dodging trees and trying not to eat dirt. It was surreal. I could still hear them back there, cracking branches, heavy steps, but it sounded like they were falling behind. Maybe they weren't as determined, or maybe I was just running like my life depended on it, because it literally did. After what felt like forever but was probably a minute or two, the sounds got quieter. Eventually, I couldn't hear anything except my own breathing and the wind. I found a thick bush, dropped down behind it, and just sat there trying not to make a sound. When I thought it was safe, I hit redial on my phone and actually talked to the dispatcher. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely hold the phone. I gave them whatever landmarks I could think of. Lots of trees, near the road, not far from the gas station. And they said they'd try to triangulate my location from the call. Not long after, I started working my way back through the woods, checking over my shoulder every 2 seconds. Finally, I saw some lights, red and blue flashing through the trees, and ran toward them. It was the police. Aaron and his creepy entourage had vanished, of course. But I told the cops everything I could remember. Honestly, the only one I really got a good look at was Aaron, and even then, the adrenaline made everything hazy. Still, they were able to track him down later that week. No clue what his plan was or who those other guys were. But I'm just so damn thankful I listened to my gut and ran when I did. So this happened a few years ago, probably around early spring. I'd been saving up to finally get a decent gaming setup, but man, brand new ones are outrageously priced. Like, enough to make your soul leave your body. So I figured I'd try my luck on Facebook Marketplace. Sometimes you get lucky, you know? After scrolling through a depressing number of sketchy posts and people selling dusty relics from 2005, I finally found a solid-looking build. RTX card, decent CPU, and it even came with a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. The seller went by Mason. He looked like a normal dude based on his profile, so I figured why not. We messaged back and forth for a bit. He answered all my questions, seemed chill, and wasn't pushy at all. I liked that. We agreed I'd swing by on a Saturday to pick it up. It was a decent drive, like an hour outside of Winslow. I live in Southport, but whatever. I made a little road trip out of it. The deal went super smooth. Mason helped me load it into the car, and we even chatted a bit about Skyrim mods and energy drinks. Felt like I was buying it off a slightly awkward coworker or something. I got back home, plugged everything in, and man, I was stoked. The thing ran beautifully. Played Apex, loaded up a few older games I hadn't touched in years, and it just handled it all like a dream. I spent the next week and a half completely absorbed. Probably not the healthiest thing, but whatever. It was fun. Then, completely out of nowhere, Mason messaged me again on Facebook. He tells me he wants the computer back. At first, I honestly thought he was joking. Like maybe he forgot something or wanted to double-check a part number. But nope. He straight up said he changed his mind and wanted it back. I told him I'd already set everything up, installed my stuff, and honestly, I was happy with it. So no, I wasn't about to undo all that because he had second thoughts. Then he came back and said he'd buy it back from me. But get this, he offered me less than what I'd paid. Like, a few $100 less. I pointed that out and he was just like, yeah, that's all I've got right now. Dude, what? I said I appreciated the offer, but the answer was still no. I mean, if he'd offered full price, I might have considered it. But asking me to take a loss for his change of heart? Nah. Well, Mason didn't take that too well. First, he sent me a friend request, which I declined, and then he just started messaging me. Constantly. Like paragraphs at a time. All kinds of weird stuff. Some of it was trying to guilt me. Some of it felt like thinly veiled threats. But mostly it was just annoying. After 3 days of this, I'd had enough. I blocked him. I figured that was the end of it. Weird dude, but whatever. Internet is full of them. Except, nope. About a week after I blocked him, this dude showed up at my house. I was home alone that night, just vibing in my room on the same gaming PC. It was around 8 p.m., pitch dark outside, and I hear this weird, slow knock at the front door. Not loud, not frantic, just deliberate. I paused my game and took off my headset, kinda puzzled. It was already late, and I wasn't expecting anyone, especially not on a random Wednesday night. I peeked out of my room, crept down the hallway, and slipped into the living room. From the side window near the front door, I took a quick glance outside. And there he was. Freaking Mason. Just standing there like he was waiting for a pizza delivery. I recognized him right away, even in the dark. He was wearing the same faded camo jacket from when I picked up the PC. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him where I lived. The closest he got to my info was my city on Facebook, and I definitely hadn't given him my address. So how the hell did he find my house? He knocked again, slightly louder this time, and I ducked to the side so he wouldn't catch a glimpse of me through the window. At first, I genuinely thought maybe he just wanted to talk, or maybe apologize for the crazy messages. But then I remembered how obsessed he'd gotten before I blocked him. No way this was just a, "Hey, sorry" drop-in. I kept all the lights off except my room, hoping he'd assume nobody was home. I crouched behind the couch and waited. He didn't budge. Just lingered on the front step for what felt like forever. I could see him shifting around like he was thinking through what to do next. Then came another round of knocking, louder this time, and he straight up started calling my name, telling me to come outside and just talk. Yeah, no thanks. I backed away and headed to my bedroom like, nope, not dealing with that. I tossed on my headphones, turned the volume up, and tried to zone out, pretending the whole thing wasn't happening. For maybe 5 minutes, it worked. Then I heard something else. A tap, but not from the front door. I froze, pulled off my headphones. There he was, Mason, literally standing outside my bedroom window, peering in like a freaking creep. I shot up so fast I nearly knocked over my chair and yanked the blinds shut in his face. He yelled something, but I couldn't really hear through the glass. Didn't care to know either. I sprinted back to the living room to make sure the front door was still locked. It was. But now he was back there, pounding on it like he was trying to shake it loose. I'd had enough. I yelled through the door that I was calling the police if he didn't get lost. He just shouted something about how he needed the computer back, and I'd stolen it from him. At that point, I was done trying to reason with the guy. I called 911, explained the whole thing to dispatch, and they said they were sending someone over. Even after I hung up, Mason stuck around, just pacing near the porch, muttering to himself, and occasionally trying the door handle. But of course, the second the flashing lights rolled up, he bolted. The officers took down my info, got a description of him, which I gave in painful detail: scruffy beard, chipped tooth, weird green beanie, and told me to let them know if he ever came back. Thankfully, he didn't. But for weeks afterward, every random knock or unfamiliar car outside made my heart jump. The whole thing still feels surreal, like a horror short from TikTok that somehow bled into my real life. Can't believe that actually happened. This happened back in July of 2014, and honestly, it still weirds me out a little to this day. I was on Facebook Marketplace hunting for a cheap desk. Nothing fancy, just something basic I could maybe sand down, throw some paint on, and make it my own. I'd used Marketplace a bunch before to sell random stuff and pick up cheap furniture, and up until that point, it had been super convenient. So one night I'm scrolling through listings and come across this desk going for like $10. Total steal. Looked sturdy, basic, no frills. I messaged the seller, some guy named Trevor, and he replied pretty quickly. Said I could swing by the next day whenever I had time, just to shoot him a text first. Next afternoon, I hit him up, and he sends me the address. I drive out in my clunky old SUV. I had already pulled the back seats out in the morning to make room. Kinda felt like I was going on a secret furniture mission or something. But as I pull into the neighborhood, I immediately get this weird vibe. The whole area looked off. Like half the houses were straight up abandoned. Some had these rotted fences falling over, Others were just covered in graffiti or had grass growing knee-high. I honestly double-checked the address a few times, thinking maybe I had the wrong spot. Nope. Trevor's house was right there. A dingy, white little house with peeling paint and a yard that looked like no one had touched it in a decade. I parked along the curb and texted him. He replied almost immediately, "Come on in." No punctuation. That somehow made it feel sketchier. So I'm walking up this pathway that's basically just grass and weeds now, and I reach the porch, which creaked under my feet like something out of a horror movie. I knock. Then I just stand there. 30 seconds go by. Then a full minute. Finally, the door swings open, and there's this guy standing there with shoulder-length hair and a wild beard. Looked like he hadn't slept in a couple days, but he wasn't unfriendly or anything. I tell him I'm there for the desk, the one from Facebook Marketplace, and he just kind of nods and steps aside without saying much. He points over toward the front corner of the room, and sure enough, there's the desk, sitting on the floor like it had just been dragged in from a garage. So I step into Trevor's house, and it's weirdly empty. Like there's nothing in there except the desk and maybe a busted-up chair in the corner. No couch, no TV, not even a rug or anything. It looked more like someone just moved out or never really moved in. Kinda unsettling, but I didn't want to be rude, so I kept it moving. He offered to help me carry the desk, and I was like, "Sure, thanks." We each grabbed a side and awkwardly waddled it out to my SUV. Took some maneuvering, but it fit. Barely. I handed him a crumpled $10 bill, said thanks again, and he just gave a little nod before heading back inside without another word. The whole thing had a weird vibe, but I told myself I was just overthinking it. People are quirky, right? Anyway, I got home about 20 minutes later, wrestled the desk out by myself. My back still regrets that, LOL. And dragged it into my apartment. Once I had it inside and finally took a better look, I noticed it had 3 drawers. I pulled them open one by one. 2 were totally empty, just dusty. But the last one had something strange. Taped to the very back of the bottom drawer was this beat-up white envelope. Naturally, my curiosity kicked in. I peeled it off and opened it up, expecting like old receipts or junk mail. Nope. Inside were these grainy, washed-out photos, like the kind you'd get from a disposable camera developed at a drugstore in the early 2000s. But here's where it gets seriously creepy. Every single one was of me. Not me in person, but like screenshots of my Facebook profile. Photos of my posts, my bio. Even my old profile picture from like 2 years ago that I forgot I had. At first, I laughed a little in that awkward, "This is probably fine, but also what the hell" kind of way. But then I flipped through more of the pictures, and my stomach dropped. There were images of my apartment building, like someone had taken a photo of the online listing from Zillow or something. And then, things got even more messed up. I found 2 more pictures that straight up looked like they were taken that day. One was of me stepping out of my SUV outside Trevor's house. The other was of me walking up his path through the weeds to the porch. I just froze. I had no clue how to process it. I wasn't even sure what I was looking at for a second. I felt gross, like I'd been watched, like someone had been planning something way before I ever showed up to buy that stupid desk. I jumped back on Facebook, trying to find Trevor's profile. His messages were still there in my inbox, but when I clicked on his name, nothing came up. Gone. Either he deleted his account right after I left, or he blocked me completely. Either way, it felt like he'd vanished into thin air. After that, I didn't really know what to do. I considered calling someone, reporting it, or whatever, but I wasn't even sure what to say. "Hey, I bought a desk from a guy and found creepy stalker photos of myself in it. Doesn't exactly sound sane." So, yeah, I tried to forget about it. I still have the desk. It's in my spare room now, though I never ended up painting it like I originally planned. As for the envelope, no idea where that ended up. I think I tossed it during one of my frantic, let's never think about this again moments. All I know is, I'm glad I never heard from Trevor after that. Maybe it was some messed up prank, or maybe he was just one of those unhinged people you pray you never meet twice. Either way, lesson learned. $10 desks aren't always a bargain. When I was 24, I worked early shifts in a tiny coffee shop. It wasn't the kind of place where you made tips or met regulars who tipped in cash. Just black coffee, plastic pastries, and people too busy to look up from their phones. My rent swallowed nearly all of my paycheck, so I ended up crashing in a studio apartment that barely fit a fridge. No bed, no couch, just a thin rug by the fridge where I curled up every night and told myself it was temporary. One sleepless night after another shift, my back was shot. I sat against the cold fridge door scrolling through Facebook Marketplace, hoping someone was giving away something that didn't smell like mold. That's when I found the futon. Brand new, sealed in box, $30 OBO. The post was only 10 minutes old. Seller's name was Lucas. No profile picture. I messaged him anyway. He answered in less than a minute. "Still got it," he wrote. "If you can come tonight, I'll hold it for $30. Said he'd even help me carry it down. The message had a weird urgency to it, like he was too eager. It was a little sketchy, yeah. But the photos looked good. 3 big boxes stacked up in what looked like a regular apartment living room. No obvious red flags. I asked him where he lived. He sent a pin drop. It was a 20-minute bike ride across town. Not the worst area, but not the best either. I hesitated. Then I stood up and stretched. My spine cracked like bubble wrap. Screw it, I thought. I pulled out $40 from a mason jar in my kitchen cabinet, shoved it in my hoodie pocket, grabbed my bike, and headed out. It was dark already. Early March, cold wind, streets half empty. I passed 2 gas stations, a church, and a bunch of shuttered shops. When I reached the building, I got this sour taste in my mouth. It was one of those low brick apartment blocks with balconies lined with empty flower pots and sagging laundry. Graffiti on the front door. I chained my bike to a rusted railing and climbed the stairs. The hallway light was flickering, and even before I reached his door, I could smell it. Old beer. Something greasy, like burnt meat left out too long. I knocked once. The door swung open like he'd been standing right there. Lucas was tall, lanky, maybe early 30s. Shaggy brown hair, a sweatshirt that looked like it hadn't been washed in a week. The second the door opened, music blasted out. Some kind of bass-heavy EDM, way too loud for a weeknight. He grinned like we were old friends. "You're here fast, come in," he shouted over the music. I stepped in. The floor crunched under my shoes, energy drink cans everywhere. Not just a few, like someone had made a game of tossing them around. The walls were bare, the kitchen counter cluttered with pizza boxes and takeout bags. A tower of 3 futon boxes stood in the living room. They looked new, sure, but none of them had store tape. Just folded closed, with scuff marks on the corners. I pointed at the stack. "You must really like sleeping, man." Lucas barked out a laugh way too loud, like he didn't hear what I said but decided to laugh anyway. "They fell off a truck," he said, winking. "You know how it is." I nodded slowly, trying to play it cool. "Right." His eyes kept darting past me, toward the hallway that led deeper into the apartment. The bathroom door was slightly open. I noticed a towel on the floor, stained dark. The place was freezing, but sweat was shining on Lucas's forehead. He scratched at his arm constantly, like he had a rash. "You want me to help carry it down?" I asked, trying to keep things moving. Yeah. Let me just..." He walked over to the futon boxes, kneeling beside one. "This one's good. I'll grab tape. Need to seal it up." He vanished into the hallway. I heard a drawer slam. The music was so loud I couldn't hear much else. I looked around again. On the coffee table were 3 wallets, different brands, different styles. One had a girl's license half pulled out. There were keys, a cracked phone, and an open pack of gum. The cushions on the couch didn't match. The whole place looked thrown together, like a stage set where no one actually lived. Lucas returned holding a roll of duct tape. His hand shook a little. "Just gotta tape this one up," he muttered. I stepped closer to the box and noticed something. The corner was pushed in slightly, like it had already been opened and closed again. No visible seal from the factory, just a strip of clear tape half peeling off. I glanced at the other boxes. Same deal. No labels, no branding, just brown cardboard. Lucas was crouched again, fussing with the tape, not meeting my eyes. He kept glancing toward the hallway like he was expecting someone, or something, to come out. "Where'd you get all these again?" I asked, trying to keep my tone casual. "Warehouse job, some returns. They let us take stuff sometimes." He was still crouched, still fiddling. "Just lucky, I guess." I didn't answer. I looked down at the floor and noticed something under the edge of the futon box. A sneaker. Just the toe, barely visible. A white running shoe with pink trim. Women's size, probably. It was lying sideways, like someone had kicked it. Lucas noticed me looking. He straightened fast, tape in hand. "Ready to carry it?" he asked, voice louder than before. Too eager, too quick. I nodded slowly and reached for the box, hands under the flap. It was lighter than I expected, way too light for a full-size futon. I didn't lift it yet. I just held it there, feeling the weight, or lack of it. Lucas stepped closer, still smiling, eyes hard now. He opened his mouth to say something, but then there was a sharp noise from the hallway behind him. A thud, followed by something that sounded like a muffled cough. He froze. I asked for a receipt. Lucas's smile twitched for the first time. Not a full expression, just a flicker at the edge of his mouth, like he'd just been asked something he didn't prepare for. He scratched the back of his neck, eyes avoiding mine, then muttered something like, "Yeah, receipts are complicated." I didn't move. Just something written. "For proof," I said. He stepped forward, slowly, and positioned himself between me and the door. His hand casually landed on the knob behind him, fingers playing with it like a habit. The bass from the speakers droned on, pulsing in the walls, vibrating through the floor. Any sound from outside, cars, neighbors, footsteps, was drowned out. I checked my phone. No bars. Not even a flicker of signal. Lucas followed my glance, then looked toward the bedroom door. Closed. Nothing came from it, but the way his eyes hung there too long, like he was waiting for a sound or a cue. That was the moment my stomach really dropped. He smiled again, but it was thin now, performative. "You can test the mattress, you know," he said. "Right here. Make sure it's good before you carry it all the way down." I shook my head, stepping back. "No, it's fine. I'll just go." He didn't move from the door. I adjusted my grip on my bike helmet. Not heavy, but solid. It was all I had. When I lifted it slightly in front of me, like a shield, something changed in his face. The smile evaporated. His whole body tensed, and without a word, he reached behind him, toward the lock. He lunged. I didn't think, I just reacted. Swung the helmet at him, hard, aiming for anything. It caught his forearm with a loud thud. He grunted and staggered back a step. That was my opening. I shoved forward, slamming my shoulder into the frame as I pushed through the door. Pain shot down my arm, but I didn't stop. I was halfway into the hallway when I felt a yank on my backpack. Lucas had grabbed the strap and pulled hard, the fabric tearing with a ripping sound. I twisted, lost my balance, hit the wall, but stayed on my feet. The strap tore completely, and I was loose. I didn't look back, just ran. 2 flights down, my feet barely touched the stairs. He was behind me, shouting something, slurred, angry, but I didn't catch the words. My heart pounded louder than the music had. I hit the exit door at full speed and burst into the cold air like I'd surfaced from underwater. My bike was still chained up. I fumbled with the lock, fingers slipping, brain screaming to move faster. I mounted, kicked off, and pedaled like my life depended on it. It probably did. 3 blocks later, I finally looked behind me. Empty sidewalk. No one followed. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I almost dumped the bike on a curb when I tried to slow down. My knee hit the frame. I didn't care. Just kept riding. Only when I got home did I realize my backpack was half empty. The $40 I'd brought, folded neatly and left on his coffee table, was gone. I hadn't even tried to grab it. I called the police the next morning, gave a full statement, the listing, the name, the messages, everything. The officer wrote it down, nodded a lot, and then told me, flatly, that since nothing was technically stolen and I hadn't been injured, they couldn't really do much. They filed a report just in case. I asked if they'd check the apartment. He just said they'd note the address. By that evening, the marketplace post was gone. Lucas's profile picture turned gray. No name, no history. Like it had never existed. The chat thread just sat there, with no new replies, his last message staring back at me. Still got it. I searched his name. Nothing. The address I visited wasn't linked to any Lucas. The building owner didn't return my call. For weeks, I kept seeing it in my head. That moment he reached for the lock. That too calm voice telling me to test the mattress. At night, I'd wake up gasping, convinced I heard fists slamming against my door. Music thumping like a heartbeat through the walls. I'd check my deadbolt twice before going back to sleep. I started keeping my helmet by the door. Eventually, I bought a used futon from a coworker. Picked it up in daylight at their actual house from someone I knew. No surprises, just furniture. I still think about that room, though. The unopened boxes that weren't really sealed. The sneaker under the futon. The wallets. That closed door. I've learned that if a deal looks too good, if someone seems too eager, there's a reason. People don't sell new things for $30 unless they're hiding something. And sometimes, what they're hiding has nothing to do with money. Sometimes, the thing you're almost buying is a mistake you don't walk away from. I did. Barely. But only because I listened to that small, sharp voice in my gut that said, "Get out now." I won't ignore it again. It happened last spring when college housing ate every dime I had. I was working part-time and still couldn't afford my shoebox dorm without skipping meals. One night, after eating ramen for the 3rd day in a row, I scrolled through Facebook Marketplace half-jokingly, looking at rental listings. I wasn't expecting much. Then I saw it. A 4-bedroom cottage listed for less than what I paid for that tiny campus room. At first, I thought it was a scam. The photos showed sunlight pouring through big windows, a porch swing, and a fenced yard with a fire pit and a few logs scattered around. The kitchen looked dated but clean. Hardwood floors, built-in shelves, and no visible mold. It felt out of place in the listings. Too perfect, too cheap. Still, I messaged right away. I said I was a student, quiet, looking for long-term housing. The reply came within minutes. The account was under the name Ruth and Joe. Their message was overly friendly, almost eager. They were glad someone young and responsible had reached out. They said the house had been in the family for decades, but they were getting too old to manage short-term tenants. "You'd be perfect," the message ended. We scheduled a visit for Saturday at noon. I borrowed my mom's car since mine was still in the shop and filled the tank with the last of my savings. The house was about 40 minutes outside town, where the road narrowed and trees leaned over the pavement like tired arms. I had to reread the directions a few times. Google Maps stopped tracking a few turns in. Eventually, I found the mailbox number on a splintered wooden post. The driveway was cracked, a mess of weeds and broken gravel, shaded by tall, leaning pines. I could barely see the house from the road. It was smaller than I expected, maybe older too, with dull brown paint and one shutter missing. The porch steps sagged, and I noticed the porch swing from the listing had a broken chain. But I figured maybe the pictures were just outdated. I parked by the side and climbed out. No other cars in sight. Birds chirped, but no other noise. I walked up the porch steps. They creaked badly under my weight, and knocked on the front door. A few seconds passed. Then I heard something unlock with a solid clunk. The door opened, and a man stood there. Thin, scruffy, mid-50s maybe, wearing a stretched-out t-shirt and jeans stained with something dark. His hair was thin, face leathery like he spent years working outside. Right behind him was a woman, pale and narrow, wrapped in a housecoat with an empty ceramic mug clutched in both hands. Her eyes looked hollow, like she hadn't slept in a while. Neither of them said anything. Just stood there staring at me. Not in a welcoming way. More like confused or disappointed. Like I was the wrong person. The man's eyes flicked over me, down to my shoes, back up. "You're here for the room?" he finally said. His voice was hoarse, like gravel. "Yeah. I messaged Ruth and Joe." "That's us," the woman said softly, and stepped back. "Come in." I hesitated, then stepped inside. The door shut behind me harder than expected, and the man immediately threw a heavy deadbolt with a loud click. That made me pause. I hadn't noticed that bolt before. The entryway was dark despite the window. The smell hit me next, like wet wood, laundry left too long in the machine, and something slightly sour. Nothing like the bright, airy photos. There were stacks of old newspapers on a side table, and a cracked lamp that wasn't on. The man walked ahead without looking back and pointed vaguely to the hallway. "Power box is in the basement. You'll want to see that. Old house. Wires trip sometimes." I nodded and followed, even though I hadn't asked about the power. The woman didn't follow us. She just stood by the closed door, holding her mug, staring at me like I might break something. Her fingers looked almost blue around the knuckles. I glanced at my phone out of habit. 2 bars, then 1, then 0. At the end of the hallway, the man opened a door that led down steep wooden stairs. No light switch near the top. He waved toward the dark like I was supposed to go first. "Boxes down there. Left wall." I didn't move. Something in the back of my neck crawled. "Is it all right if I look at the rest of the house first?" I asked. He shrugged. "Sure, but you'll want to see the box. Can't live here if the power keeps cutting." Upstairs, a floorboard creaked. Not loud, but distinct. like someone shifted their weight in one spot. I looked up toward the ceiling. No one had mentioned other tenants. The man didn't react to the noise. He just stared at me. I stepped back a little from the basement door. I checked my phone again. Still no service. I opened a text draft anyway, just typed, "At the house. Weird vibe. Deadbolt locked." Not sure why I wrote it, just needed to feel like someone knew where I was. It didn't send. The little circle spun once and froze. Something told me to go. My back teeth were clenched, and my shoulder muscles tightened without me realizing. I could have made an excuse, faked a call, walked out. But I didn't. I told myself I'd come this far. I needed a place. This was just some old weird people. Nothing criminal about being awkward. I said, "I'll check it out then." The man nodded once, and I turned toward the stairs. I placed one foot down. Wood flexed under my heel. The air from below was cool and damp, like a crawl space. I grabbed the banister and stepped down slowly. Behind me, the man stayed still. No sound from him. Another creak came from above, slower this time. Not footsteps, just weight shifting. My ears strained for anything else. My foot landed on the third step. I paused again. The basement was pitch black. I pulled out my phone, turned on the flashlight, and aimed it down. The beam barely cut through the shadows. I saw the cement floor, an old metal shelf, some paint cans. Then my flashlight flicked once, then again. And then the screen went black entirely. The woman whispered something about checking the fuse, and the man's hand fumbled in his pocket. His fingers moved slow, deliberate. Then I caught a glint. Metal. My stomach turned. It looked like a small padlock, maybe for the basement latch. My throat felt dry as paper. I tried to stay casual and said, "Can I see the backyard first? I really want to get a feel for the whole space." He didn't like that. His face tightened just slightly. "Yard's nothing special," he muttered. "We can look after. Just go check the box. Make sure you're fine with the wiring." I didn't move. He stepped closer. Not fast, not threatening, just insistent. But I stepped back into the hallway and noticed something new. His other hand held the front door key. He hadn't had that before. He slid it into the deadbolt without taking his eyes off me and turned it with a soft click. Locked again. That's when I heard it. A faint cough. Not from him. Not from her. It came from the basement. Just one dry little sound, like someone had been waiting too long without speaking. That small sound told me I wasn't alone in the house. I froze, hands still holding the rail at the top of the basement stairs. I didn't look at the man now. I couldn't. My mind just spun trying to process who was in that basement and why no one mentioned them. But I forced my voice calm and said something dumb like, "Oh, you've got central heating? Where are the vents located? I'm allergic to dust, so I always check for airflow." He squinted, confused, but nodded slowly. "Yeah, there's one in each room. I guess the main ducts, under the floorboards. Might be hard to get to. We cleaned it last winter, I think." I nodded. "Does it push heat through this hallway, or just the bedrooms?" He said, and turned like he might point something out. That was the second I needed. I twisted and launched sideways into the door frame. My shoulder hit just above the lock plate. Rotten wood cracked loud under the force. Light burst in through the crack as the door flung open halfway. He lunged, too slow. The edge of the door clipped his knee, and he shouted out in pain. I didn't stop. I shoved the door open all the way, stumbled across the porch, and hit the gravel running. My sneakers slipped, and I felt sharp rock underfoot, but I didn't care. Behind me, I heard my name. "Ryan!" he yelled. I didn't tell them my name. I dove into my mom's car, hands shaking so bad I dropped the keys once, got them in the second time. Shifted to reverse and punched it. The wheels spun, gravel spraying everywhere. I turned onto the road, hit drive, and didn't look back until the trees swallowed the house. When I did glance in the mirror, the cottage was gone. No one followed. No car came after me. I pulled into a gas station 15 miles away and called the sheriff's department. Told them I'd been lured to a property by fake landlords acting sketchy and possibly holding someone in the basement. I didn't know how to explain it better. They said they'd send a unit. I waited an hour with the engine off, watching every car that pulled in. Finally, a deputy came to meet me. He was polite but looked like he didn't buy the story right away. I gave him the address, showed him the texts, showed the listing on Facebook, but by then, the listing was gone. Deactivated. "We'll go check it out," he said. "You sure you didn't imagine some of this? Old houses creak." An hour later, they called back. No one was there. The house was empty. No furniture, no mugs, no man or woman. No signs of forced entry on the door either, since I'd broken the lock open myself. But they did confirm something. The house had been foreclosed 7 months earlier. The bank had put it under maintenance hold. No one had permission to be there. "Whoever you met," the deputy said, "they don't show up on any rental license, property file, nothing. It's like they just walked in and set up camp." They took my statement, but I could tell they didn't expect to find those people. I wasn't hurt, and no proof of anything criminal, so the case ended up being a note in their files. I never found the Facebook account again. Ruth and Joe vanished. The messages disappeared a few days later, along with the chat history. I gave them my number, my name, my email. That still keeps me up sometimes. Now, every time I check a rental, I look at the property record first. County databases, tax info, foreclosure history. I even drive by before setting up any visits. I don't care if the price is perfect. If something feels off, I leave. I still wonder who was in the basement. I still wonder what would have happened if I'd gone down there like they wanted. Cheap rent is tempting, but freedom costs more than money. Next time a stranger pushes you toward a basement, remember, no deal is worth a locked door behind you. Last month, I was preparing for a big interstate move. New job, new apartment, whole new state. It was stressful enough, but on top of that, I had to sell my car. A decent 5-year-old sedan, nothing flashy, but it ran great. I put it up on a couple of sites, priced it fair based on mileage and condition. Within hours, my inbox was full of the usual lowballers and time wasters. One guy offered me half the price and said he'd pick it up in cash today, no questions. Another said he'd trade a gaming PC and a drone. I ignored most of them. Then Owen messaged me. He didn't haggle, just said, "If it's still available, I'll take it for the listed price. Cash." That stopped me for a second. I thought it was a scam at first, but he seemed polite, wrote in complete sentences, and responded fast. He asked to meet in person and test drive it before handing over the money. Seemed fair. He suggested an abandoned grocery store parking lot that had been empty for years but still had a massive open area. Said it would give us room to test without traffic. It sounded a little weird, but it wasn't totally out of the ordinary. I'd been to that lot before. It was huge, open, and technically still public. He offered to meet around 7 p.m., said he worked long shifts, and evenings worked best. I agreed. He didn't seem pushy, just straightforward. I figured with the sun still up and the location visible from the road, it wasn't risky. I told my fiancée and she raised her eyebrows. She said, "You better take pepper spray or something." I told her it was just a car sale, not a Craigslist horror story. That afternoon, I cleaned the car inside and out, vacuumed the carpets, wiped the dash, even washed the windows. I printed the title and put it in an envelope with the bill of sale, had the maintenance records in a folder. All I wanted was a smooth handoff, cash, signature, done. I left the house just before 6:30 to get there on time. By the time I pulled into the lot, dusk had turned everything a dull orange. Street lights hadn't fully come on yet, and the edges of the lot were already sinking into shadows. There were no other cars around, except a rusted-out van parked under a busted lamp. One of those white ones with no windows on the sides. I pulled closer toward the center of the lot, where the pavement was less cracked. That's when Owen walked up. He had a cap on, pulled low, and looked like he was maybe in his early 30s. Thin build, light stubble, khakis, and a gray hoodie. Seemed calm, but something about him looked too clean, like staged. Walking a few feet behind him was another guy, taller, broader, maybe 6'3" or more. Didn't say a word. He had sunglasses on even though the sun was nearly down. I thought maybe he was just quiet or didn't like talking. Owen greeted me, shook my hand briefly, and went straight to looking at the car. No small talk. His friend stood to the side, holding a phone in front of him, filming everything but never saying a thing. They didn't really inspect anything seriously. Owen popped the hood, glanced at the engine for like 5 seconds, then shut it again. Didn't check fluids. Didn't even ask to hear it idle. "The paint looks solid," he said. "Can I feel how it steers?" I told him sure. He asked if I'd ride passenger, just for the test. I figured it'd be fine. He got in the driver's seat, and the tall guy climbed into the back seat without a word. I didn't love that, but I didn't want to make a scene. We pulled out slowly. The lot had wide lanes, mostly empty, with a few barriers at the far end. Owen took 2 slow laps around the outer edge, barely pushing the gas. Then suddenly, he punched the brake hard. Tires screeched, a little dust kicking up around us. I grabbed the handle instinctively. "Brakes feel soft," he said. "Might be air in the line." I want him to try it. He nodded toward the back seat. We swapped seats without a word. I stepped out of the car, still thinking it was just a brake test, nothing more. The quiet guy got out too, walking around the car with slow, deliberate steps. I climbed into the passenger side, the door still hanging open as I reached for the seatbelt. Before I could click it in, I felt something hard press into my side. I looked down. He wasn't holding a phone anymore. In his right hand was a long, dirty screwdriver, but it wasn't the kind you fix stuff with. The tip had been sharpened into a spike. He pressed it just below my ribs, firm but not stabbing yet. "Wallet. Phone. Now." His voice was deeper than I expected, and calm, like he'd done this before. I froze. My body stopped working. My brain screamed, but my hands didn't move. He pressed harder. Not enough to draw blood, but enough to tell me he wasn't bluffing. "Now," he said again. Some part of me kicked in, maybe instinct or muscle memory. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my wallet and phone, tossing both to the floor like they were hot. Owen reached over from the driver's side, yanked the handbrake up, and suddenly leaned across me. The driver's door flew open, and he shoved me hard with his shoulder. I tumbled out, scraping both hands on the rough pavement as I landed. My knee hit the asphalt hard, but I didn't feel it right away. All I saw was the door slam shut and the sedan lurch forward. They didn't drive off slow. The tires squealed again as they took a hard turn, bolting for the exit at the far end of the lot. The van followed almost instantly, engine growling louder than I remembered. I scrambled up just in time to see both vehicles disappear into the road, taillights blinking once before vanishing into the tree-lined stretch that curved behind the highway. Dust hung in the air, mixing with the last orange light. The lot went silent. I stood there alone. My palms stung. My jeans were torn at the knee. I looked around like someone might pop out and say it was a joke, but there was no one. Just the empty shells of street lamps and a gust of wind sweeping dirt across the concrete. I started running. The grocery store building was still there, mostly intact from the outside, even though it had been shut down for years. I sprinted to the entrance, pulling at the locked glass doors. One gave slightly. I wedged it open just enough to slide through. Inside, the place was stripped. No shelves, no checkout counters, just tile flooring broken in parts and old ceiling wires hanging like vines. "Hello?" I shouted. My voice echoed off the walls, bouncing around like a rubber ball. "Is anyone here? Help!" I yelled again, louder this time, walking through aisles of nothing, hoping for a maintenance room, a phone, a night guard, anything. There was nothing, not even power. No landline, no lights, just busted fixtures and a broken fan spinning slowly overhead. I stumbled back outside and looked up and down the road. Empty. Then headlights. A semi-truck was approaching, its lights cutting through the dusk. I sprinted into the road, waving both arms. The driver braked, hard, horn blaring. I shouted, "Call 911," before he could yell at me. I must have looked insane. Blood on my hands, dirt on my shirt, panic in my voice. He pulled out his phone without asking questions. Police arrived in less than 10 minutes. First a patrol car, then 2 more units. I told them everything, every detail I could remember. The screwdriver, the profile name, the van, the parking lot, the angle they drove off. They didn't seem surprised. They asked me to show them the online listing, and I pulled up the screenshot I'd saved on my email. The profile was already gone. "User not found," it said in bold. They searched the area, combed through the surrounding streets, but came back empty. All they found was a shredded piece of black plastic lying near the lot exit, likely the fake plate covering. No prints, no cameras, no witnesses. One officer shook his head. Chop shops love places like this. Open space, fast exits, no surveillance. I just stood there, trying not to fall apart. The tow truck came to pick me up around 9. Insurance barely touched the value of the car. They said without security footage or recovery, they could only do a partial payout. I tried explaining it wasn't negligence. I was set up. Didn't matter. Policy was policy. Then came the move. It drained every cent we had saved. What I thought would fund our new start just ended up leaving us broke and scrambling. We made it to the new state, barely, but the car situation delayed everything. Jobs, appointments, even groceries. I borrowed rides when I could, took the bus when I couldn't. For weeks after, every white van I saw made my stomach twist. I'd flinch at gas stations, grip the seat every time we passed one parked along the curb. Couldn't shake the memory of how fast it all turned. Now, when I sell anything, I only meet at the DMV. Bright lights, people, cameras. If someone insists on meeting somewhere more convenient, I don't reply. Doesn't matter how good the offer sounds. Doesn't matter if they're nice in the messages. Trust is cheap online. A stolen engine's worth more. And the tow truck ride home? That costs more than money. It happened 3 weeks after my gear was smashed in a traffic wreck. Some guy ran a red and clipped me at an intersection. Camera, lenses, laptop, all trashed. Insurance kept processing the claim, whatever that meant. I did a few shoots with borrowed gear, but it wasn't sustainable. Clients stopped calling once I started turning down gigs or delivering late. I checked the secondhand forums a few times a day, hoping something would pop up in budget. One night, around 2 a.m., I saw a listing pop up for a mirrorless body I'd been dreaming about for years. Brand new model, full frame, barely used, under $300. Seller's name was Grant. Profile photo looked like a LinkedIn headshot, and his page had a bunch of sharp cityscape and drone shots. No selfies, no pets, no red flags. The grammar in his messages was clean. Responses were fast, but not pushy. He said he upgraded to a higher-end model and just wanted this one gone. Pickup only, no shipping. Said he didn't want to deal with flakes. He lived downtown, near the harbor, in one of those all-glass high-rises with curved balconies. I Googled the building. Doorman, valet, private gym, rooftop lounge. Reviews said it was secure. Honestly, it made the whole thing feel safer. Someone like that probably had 10 other cameras. He offered to meet at noon so the lighting would be good. "You'll want to test it properly," he'd said. Seemed thoughtful enough. I grabbed a memory card and made sure my phone was charged. Told my roommate I had a meeting and left it at that. The subway ride took 20 minutes. Everything around the building looked sterile and overbuilt. Smooth pavement, landscaped bushes, valet umbrellas lined up in a row. The lobby inside smelled like citrus and marble polish. One of those places where the front desk guy wears gloves even in summer. I gave the unit number, and the guy behind the desk called up to confirm. Grant answered immediately and told them to send me up. The elevator had a touch screen and a little light that showed which floor you were going to. When the doors opened, it was straight into a hallway of thick carpet, recessed lights, and those oversized condo doors with brushed steel knockers. I knocked once, and the door opened almost immediately. Grant was taller than I expected, maybe early 30s. Buzzed hair, tight joggers, designer socks, no shoes. He had that gym body look, but still narrow, like he did more rowing than lifting. His voice was upbeat, but controlled. "Glad you made it," he said. "You'll love the shutter response on this one. Super crisp." He didn't offer a drink or ask me to sit down. Just turned and walked deeper into the apartment. The walls were mostly white, barely decorated. A few large, black-framed prints of cityscapes hung at perfect height, evenly spaced. The air was cold, running AC in early spring. He passed the living room entirely and led me into the master bedroom. It threw me off a bit. Most people would keep the gear on a table in the main room. I hesitated for a second in the doorway, but followed him in. The room was big, dark wood floors, massive bed, huge windows half covered by blackout shades. On the dresser was the camera body from the ad, lens cap on, battery already inserted, no other gear around. In the corner, a tripod stood facing the bed. A camera I didn't recognize was mounted on it. Its red light was blinking, recording or on standby, I couldn't tell. Grant didn't mention the tripod. He walked in first and turned, letting the door close softly behind me. I heard the latch catch. He leaned against the door like it was casual, but he didn't move away from it, still smiling, no aggression in his voice. "So, you do much modeling?" he asked. "You've got the kind of look that pops on film. Natural symmetry." I gave a short laugh, unsure how to answer. "Not really. I'm usually behind the camera." I stepped toward the dresser and lifted the camera, pretending to inspect the buttons. It felt real. Weight was right. I popped open the memory card door just to stay busy. He didn't budge from the door. "I love working with fresh faces," he said. "People before they get overtrained. You know, raw expressions. I kept the lens cap on and raised the camera to my eye like I was checking focus. My other hand slid behind me toward the strap of my backpack, inching it off one shoulder. I took a small step sideways, closer to the corner of the bed, trying to angle myself toward the edge of the room. The lens cap was missing, but the memory card slot was full. When I tapped playback, thumbnails popped up, a grid of women, all sitting or lying on that same bed. Different faces, different clothes, but always the same angle, same sheets, same blinking tripod in the corner. None of them looked like pro shoots. A few were smiling, others looked mid-sentence, but one woman stared straight at the camera with her mouth slightly open, like she hadn't known it was filming until that second. My fingers went cold. I clicked out fast and tried to act normal. Grant stepped forward, slowly, like he was trying not to startle me. "You should try sitting for a shot," he said. "Helps you feel how it handles." His tone was still friendly, but there was something underneath it now. Too smooth, too practiced. I glanced toward the hallway, then forced a chuckle. "Lighting's better out in the living room, yeah?" I said. "Big windows, right?" He didn't answer or move, just kept looking at me, his head tilted slightly, as if studying something. I couldn't see the doorknob behind him. I turned the camera off and set it gently back on the dresser. "Hey," I added, smiling too hard. "Mind if I use your bathroom first? Travel coffee, you know?" He paused. It was the first time he didn't respond immediately. Then he nodded once and stepped away from the door, pointing to the hallway. "Just left of the kitchen," he said. The second his back turned, I moved. Not a run, not a sprint. Just a fast, tight walk straight into the hall, past the kitchen, past the perfectly clean countertops and stacked drone boxes. I didn't look for the bathroom. I went straight for the elevator. I didn't hear his steps until I was halfway across the hallway. "Hey," he called, voice no longer casual. "Where you going?" I didn't answer. I hit the elevator button and heard the car start to rise. He called my name. Still not loud, but sharper. Less smile now. The doors opened, and I dove in, hitting the close button over and over. I heard footsteps behind me just as the doors started to slide shut. His shadow passed across the threshold, but he didn't make it in time. The car began to descend, and I felt the pressure drop in my head. In the lobby, I walked fast to the desk. The security guy looked up, surprised. "Something wrong?" he asked. "Yeah," I said, trying not to show how fast my heart was beating. "That guy, in 1804? Something's off. There's recordings, cameras pointed at the bed. I think he's filming people without consent." The guard frowned and typed something. "We'll make a note of it," he said, voice low. "But he's a resident. You say he hurt you?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "But something's not right. You should check." He shrugged like he'd heard it all before. "We'll look into it," he said again. Outside, the air hit me like a slap. Warm sun, street noise, distant brakes and horns. I tapped for a rideshare and fumbled my phone once before catching it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept glancing behind me until I was in the car and 2 blocks away. The driver asked if I was okay. I said I was just tired. He didn't press it. That night I checked the listing again. Gone. Grant's profile, the ad, all of it. Deleted. I even reverse-searched some of the cityscape photos he'd posted. At least half were stock images, or pulled from public pages with no connection to him. It wasn't his work. It wasn't his name, probably. One of my friends said I should have filmed him, or grabbed the memory card. But honestly, I'm just glad I got out. Pride's cheaper than blood. I bought a used camera from a certified store the next week. It wasn't as fancy, but it came with a receipt and a return policy. I kept thinking about that red blinking light. How calm he stayed. How many people had smiled back at him, just like I almost did. There's always someone trying to get something for cheap. I get that. But now I know. When a deal feels too good, you better check the door locks before anything else. Some people don't want to sell the camera. They want to use it. Last autumn, I scraped together my savings to furnish my first Airbnb unit. I'd already stretched the budget thin on paint, lighting, and new flooring, but the appliances hit harder than I expected. The fridge alone at retail was close to what I'd planned for everything else. After 3 nights scrolling Facebook Marketplace until my eyes hurt, I found a nearly new stainless steel model listed for half the store price. Clean, barely used. Seller claimed she remodeled and didn't need it anymore. I messaged her right away, and she replied within minutes. She dropped a pin instead of an address. A rural road outside of town, about 45 minutes from me. Said her driveway was tight and asked if I could come alone. Less hassle, she said. Easier for maneuvering the truck. Something about it felt a little weird, but I'd done pickups like this before, especially for tools or scrap. She said daylight hours were fine, so I aimed to head out right after lunch. I printed the directions, charged my phone, and threw a dolly and 2 ratchet straps in the bed. The first half of the drive was familiar enough. I passed a few small farms, gas stations, a broken billboard for some water park miles away. Then the trees started crowding in, and the 2-lane road turned to 1. GPS still worked, though it lagged a bit with every turn. I kept glancing at the printout just to double-check. The last 10 minutes, I saw no houses, no cars. Just rows of trees pressing close on either side. My phone dropped to 1 bar. I told myself it was nothing. The pin dropped at a driveway barely wider than my truck. Gravel was half covered in leaves, and the branches overhead made it dark even with the sun out. Still, I pulled in. Maybe 50 yards in, I saw the house. Small, single-story, wood siding the color of dried mud. The windows were boarded up, some with splinters poking out at angles. The mailbox was rusted shut, tilted sideways on a bent pole. I slowed to a crawl and stopped just shy of the porch. Something didn't feel right. I opened the seller's message thread to ask if I was at the right place. Before I could type, the app flashed. User deleted. I stared at it, thumb frozen. I refreshed. Nothing. Just gone. Wind moved through the trees, and a loose shutter on the side of the house banged against the siding like someone knocking. I cracked the window and called out, "Hello?" Nothing. Just the echo bouncing off empty boards. I looked around. No car, no lights, no sign of life. But in the patch of dirt near the porch, I spotted a few footprints, not mine, leading toward the back of the house. Not boots, not work shoes. Sneakers. Fresh, clean soles. I sat still for a second, listening. Then I killed the engine. Slid the keys into my pocket and kept one between my fingers, just in case. I stepped out and took slow steps along the gravel. The driveway curved around a weathered shed with one corner half collapsed. The prints led behind it. I followed. I was maybe 10 feet from the edge of the shed when I heard it. The sound of gravel shifting. Not mine. Behind me. I turned fast. 3 men stepped out from the trees across the driveway. No one said anything. No one looked surprised. They were all wide, thick jackets, jeans, work boots. 2 had hoods up. 1 had a camo hat pulled low. They didn't charge me, didn't speak. They just moved, slow and sure, like they'd done it before. They didn't bunch up. They fanned out, taking up the space between me and my truck. One stood directly in the middle. The other two took angles on either side, just enough to block the view past them. I looked behind me, thinking maybe I'd sprint for the woods, but it was all bramble and shadows. I opened my mouth to speak. My throat closed around my name. One of the men asked, "You Lisa with the fridge?" His voice was casual, almost friendly, like we were standing in line at a coffee shop. The one to his left chuckled, deep and dry. I didn't answer. I pointed back toward the truck like I didn't hear right, gave a half laugh, fake confused. "I think I got the wrong place," I said, loud, like maybe someone inside would hear. I backed up slow, heel catching a soft patch of dirt. They didn't break eye contact, didn't talk again. They moved forward, same slow pace, like I was a deer not yet ready to spook. I stepped backward toward the side of the house, trying not to turn my back. The middle guy tilted his head, just slightly. That tiny movement made something in me snap. I turned and bolted. Weeds whipped my ankles, tall and dry from months without rain. I sprinted toward the tree line behind the shed. I heard them move. Boots over gravel, then the sharp crackle of brush. A hand grabbed at my jacket, catching just the edge. I heard the fabric rip right behind my shoulder. I ducked and pushed harder. Low branches caught my face, snapped across my arms. One smacked my eye and blurred vision on one side. I kept running. My lungs started to seize, but I didn't slow down. The trees were thinner on the far side. I scanned for anything, power lines, fences, road hum. Then faintly, ahead and to the right, I caught the soft roar of traffic. I headed toward it, slipping once in mud, but not falling. I kept running. The woods broke like a curtain pulled back. I hit the edge of a ditch and scrambled up. Asphalt. A two-lane road, empty. I ran straight onto it, both arms up, waving wildly. I didn't even check for cars first. A dusty red pickup skidded to a stop 20 feet from me, tires screeching. The driver yelled something I couldn't make out, then jumped out, keeping the engine running. I stumbled forward, still waving, and he grabbed my arm, pulled me into the cab. I gasped out words: fridge, fake listing, men in the woods. He didn't ask questions. Just grabbed his phone and called 911, one hand still on the wheel, glancing in the mirror. We passed the entry to that narrow gravel drive a minute later. My truck was still there, parked at a slight angle, driver's door shut. From the road, it looked like it hadn't been touched. No one standing near it. No movement. No sign of the three men. Sheriff's deputies rolled up about 30 minutes after we parked in a gas station lot. 2 cars, lights, but no sirens. I told them everything I remembered. Time, faces, the shed, the footprints. They asked if I saw a weapon. I said no. They asked if they spoke threats. I said no, not really. Just showed up. They took the driver's statement too, then drove back out to the property with me following in the back seat of a cruiser. When we pulled in, the house was still there, boards still on the windows. My truck was just like I left it, minus the key scratch down the side door. They swept the house. No one inside, no fridge, no furniture. The inside was gutted down to studs, no drywall, no wiring, nothing. Just dust and a few beer cans near what used to be a fireplace. The shed behind was caved in, empty except for some rusted-out tools. Tire tracks led away into a shallow path that looped through the woods and came out on another road 2 miles away. Whoever they were, they had a way out. I gave my statement again at the station, filed a report, described the fridge ad, the PIN, the messages. They tried running the phone number and username. Nothing stuck. No VIN hits from any vehicles in the area. Just cold trails. When I called my insurance company, they laughed. Not literally, but I could hear it in the hold music they left me on. They quoted me back page 32 of the coverage packet, something about personal property not being covered off premises during non-commercial transport. Basically, not their problem. They suggested small claims if I really wanted to pursue damages. The truck repair alone drained my maintenance fund. I almost had to scrap the rental plan completely. But I got lucky. A cousin offered a loan, interest-free. Said it was better than me giving up after getting that close. I took it, paid him back slow, furnished the unit a piece at a time, and skipped the deals from then on. Now I order only from verified sellers or store pickup. Appliances come wrapped, boxed, and barcoded. If someone tells me to come alone to a place with no address, I don't even answer. Doesn't matter if it's half price or a quarter. A fridge isn't worth a hospital bed or worse. That afternoon rewired something in me. Because before that, I believed danger made noise. That threat showed its face. That bad places looked like movie sets and bad guys shouted warnings. But none of that happened here. No threats. No weapons. Just quiet, polite questions and slow steps in a silent yard. I tell anyone who'll listen. Cheap pixels on a screen can become expensive bruises in real life. Doesn't matter if the item's a steal. If the address ends in trees and silence, stay and drive and keep moving. When I was 28, I collected retro furniture like other people collect stamps. I didn't care if the fabric was faded or the legs were scuffed. I just loved the character. That week, someone posted a yellow mid-century couch for $40. From the photo, it looked pristine. Clean lines, low back, splayed legs, the kind of thing you'd see in a movie set in 1964. The seller's name was Alice. No profile photo, but her messages were friendly. She even added a smiley face when confirming the pickup time. Said her aunt had passed and they were clearing the house. Gave me an address in a suburb I hadn't been to before. It was already getting dark when I left the city. I borrowed my roommate's truck and tossed a couple of old blankets in the back to wrap the couch. As I drove out, I was humming, tapping the steering wheel, half thinking about where I'd put it in the apartment. Maybe replace the brown one in the corner. The streets got quieter as I entered the neighborhood. Nice lawns, some wind chimes, most houses with the lights already on. The address led me to a brick house with a slanted roof, paint flaking near the windowsills. The porch light buzzed faintly, throwing shadows across a row of empty flower pots. I rang the bell once. A few seconds later, the door creaked open, and a woman in her late 70s stared at me. She had wispy white hair and a pink cardigan, but she didn't say anything. Just looked at me, then slammed the door without a word. The sound made me take a step back. I double-checked the address. It matched the one in the messages. For a moment, I thought maybe she was hard of hearing, or maybe there'd been a miscommunication. I stood there awkwardly for another 30 seconds before my phone buzzed. It was a text. Garage doors open, come round back. No emoji this time. I walked down the side of the house, past a trash bin that smelled like old food. The backyard was dark except for a dim floodlight hanging above the garage. The side door was ajar, and inside, the air felt close and stale. A single bulb hung from the ceiling, swinging slightly like it had just been nudged. Beneath it sat the couch, and it was even more perfect in person. Lemon yellow, like it had never been used. Almost glowing under the bulb. I stepped inside and reached for the edge of the fabric, running my fingers over the texture. The room was otherwise empty. No shelves, no tools, just bare walls and the couch in the middle. I took a step back to get a better look, and that's when I heard the footsteps behind me. Not heavy stomps, soft, measured steps, and then a short giggle, the kind that once made my stomach flip in a good way. My breath hitched. I turned slowly. Megan stepped forward, out of the shadows, into the cone of light. She had a gray wig on crooked, like a Halloween costume. Still wore her usual black eyeliner, just smudged now. A little older looking than I remembered. Thinner, too, like she hadn't been eating much. Her left hand swung at her side. In her right, she held something partially hidden behind her thigh. Metal glinted for a second. Looked like a wrench or maybe a tire iron. "We need to talk," she said, voice flat. "Where your little friends won't interrupt." I didn't say anything for a second. My brain was chewing through too many questions at once. How she'd known about the couch thing. Why she'd gone this far. How she even knew where I lived or who I was living with. "Why the act?" I asked, keeping my voice low, controlled. My eyes kept drifting toward the thing in her hand. My feet felt like they were rooted to the concrete. I didn't move, didn't want to give her a reason to swing. She launched into a tirade about closure, pacing in a half circle around me. Her voice climbed with each word, cracking like dry branches under weight. She blamed me for everything. Her job loss, the panic attacks, the way her friends had stopped calling. Her tone bounced between fury and despair. I started edging toward the open driveway, slow and sideways, trying not to trigger anything sudden. But she moved with me, always one step ahead. That's when I saw it clearly. A kitchen knife with a serrated edge, held just behind her thigh. Not a wrench, not a bluff. "You left me when I was at my worst," she shouted, and the blade caught the light as she gestured. I raised my hands. "Megan, we don't have to do this. You need help." She didn't blink. The knife shook in her grip, either from nerves or rage. Mascara streaked her cheeks. She took a step forward, and I backed up until my heel tapped the edge of the couch. "You moved on like I was just some bad phase," she said, and her voice cracked. "Like I never mattered." She lunged before I could respond. I darted sideways, aiming for the corner near the garage door. Her arm whipped out and caught my shoulder with the knife. The pain hit like a firecracker under my skin, fast, hot, real. I stumbled but didn't fall. She was already turning to come at me again. But clarity kicked in. I couldn't talk her down. I had to get out. My eyes locked on a paint can resting by the far wall, maybe left over from an old garage project. I grabbed it and hurled it at the floor in front of her. The clang startled her, and I used the moment to bolt through the side door. The night air hit me like a slap. I didn't check if she was behind me. I just ran. My shirt clung wet and warm to my skin. Blood soaked into the waistband of my jeans. But I didn't stop. I ran straight toward the glow of the street lamps. My feet thudded against the sidewalk. I screamed for help, shouted that I'd been stabbed. Porch lights flicked on one by one as I passed. A dog barked. A door opened somewhere behind me. I turned once and saw her at the edge of the driveway. She hadn't followed me into the street. She was on her knees now, both hands still holding the knife, screaming something I couldn't make out. Maybe she was crying. Maybe she was apologizing. I didn't go back to find out. Police came fast. I saw the cruiser lights bouncing off the windows before I heard the sirens. One officer approached cautiously while the other kept an eye on her. They didn't tackle her. They didn't shout. They just walked up, said her name, and put the cuffs on while she sobbed into her lap. The knife clattered to the driveway like a dropped fork. I sat on the curb with pressure clamped on my shoulder by a neighbor's towel. My hand was shaking too hard to hold my phone. The paramedics arrived maybe 5 minutes later and loaded me onto a stretcher. I remember the garage light still glowing in the distance, a pale yellow spotlight over the couch. It looked untouched. untouched and absurd. Doctors at the hospital said the cut missed anything vital but needed stitching. 8 centimeters through muscle. They gave me antibiotics and a tetanus booster. A detective took my statement in a quiet room that smelled like cleaning spray. I told them everything. The couch ad, the messages, the fake name. They nodded, like it wasn't the first time they'd seen someone twist a good memory into a trap. Megan didn't go to jail, at least not right away. After a psychiatric evaluation, they placed her in care. The doctors said she was unstable, untreated for months. Obsessive behavior, paranoid thoughts, all of it left to fester too long. I didn't contest it. I didn't press charges. It didn't feel like justice would fix anything. I just wanted it to be over. When I got back to the apartment a few days later, the couch was still the main focus of the living room. My roommate had no idea what happened until I came in with my arm in a sling. He offered to help, but I told him not to touch anything. That night, I dragged every piece of retro furniture I owned down to the curb. Tables, lamps, the vinyl armchair from 1961. I didn't care. I posted free signs and walked away. A week later, I went to a furniture store and bought a plain gray sofa. Nothing special, nothing mid-century, just soft, solid, and new. It fit fine, sat quiet, no stories attached. Nostalgia's a funny thing. Makes you chase stuff that reminds you of better times, like the furniture will bring back the people too. But it doesn't. It just builds a museum of things that can't fix the past. Now, when I buy something, I ask 2 questions. Where are the exits, and who's selling? Bargains come and go. Safety doesn't. Some memories belong in boxes, not on display, not in your home, not glowing under a swinging bulb while someone cries with a knife. Last winter, right after my girlfriend of 2 years dumped me, I moved into this cold, barely furnished apartment on the edge of town. It was quiet, cheap, and ugly. No couch, no real bed, just a mattress on the floor and some cardboard boxes stacked where a table should be. I ate takeout on my knees or standing at the counter. After about a week, I started browsing Facebook Marketplace and saw this solid oak dining table and 4 chairs. Way underpriced. I messaged immediately. The seller's name was Mallory. Her profile looked normal. Pictures of food, a dog, and her smiling with a group of friends. She replied quick, said she was moving out of state, said I'd need strong arms to carry the chairs, but that she'd help. I drove out there the next morning. Her house was a little older but neat. She was waiting at the door, holding a chair already. We chatted while carrying the furniture out. She laughed when I scraped my knuckles on the hatchback. When everything was packed, she added, "This set deserves better than an empty room," and gave me a thumbs up. That night, she sent me a meme on Messenger, something stupid about coffee addiction. I laughed and replied. It kept going. Jokes turned into sharing YouTube videos, then long threads about breakups and weird neighbors. I figured she was just nice, maybe lonely too. A few nights later, we ended up on a phone call that stretched until nearly 2 a.m. By Friday, we agreed to get ramen downtown. We talked for hours. She mentioned she worked remotely in graphic design, lived alone, had no family nearby. She walked me back to my car and gave me this quick side hug. I didn't think much of it. Just felt good to talk to someone again. The next day she texted, "Your new table's gonna feel abandoned without me." I sent back a laughing emoji. An hour later, she showed up outside my building with a cardboard tray, 2 coffees, and a paper bag of pastries. I buzzed her in. She walked around my kitchen like she owned it, poking at drawers, asking where I kept spices. I hadn't unpacked much, so she offered to help. I didn't see a reason to say no. She pulled everything out of the boxes and started stacking dishes, rearranging my cabinets like it was her own place. She came by the next day, and the next. Sometimes with food, sometimes with some excuse. I was bored, or had to drop something off nearby. She didn't ask. She just knocked or buzzed and came up. I chalked it up to friendliness. She was outgoing, maybe a bit pushy, but still fun. We didn't kiss or anything. She just sort of inserted herself into my days. One night, I was in the middle of watching a movie when my phone buzzed. She had messaged 4 times. Just memes and hello. I was tired and didn't reply right away. Within 15 minutes, she called. I picked up, and she said, "Thought you died." I laughed it off and said I was just watching something. She didn't really respond to that. The next day, she showed up again. This time, she had a set of mugs she thought would match the vibe of the place. I was half asleep and let her in without thinking. After that, she started leaving things. First the mugs, then a hoodie draped on the back of a chair. Her chapstick on the windowsill in the bathroom. I didn't notice right away, but it added up. One night, we were eating takeout on the floor, and she asked, "Hey, would you be okay if I had a key? Like, just in case of emergencies?" I blinked at her and laughed a little. "I think I'm good," I said, trying to keep it light. She nodded, didn't say much after that. The next morning, I brushed my teeth and noticed my toothbrush was in a different cup. It had always been in the ceramic one. Now it was in this weird plastic thing I didn't recognize. I walked out to the kitchen and found Mallory already at the counter, stirring something on the stove. "You moved my toothbrush?" I asked. She looked over and smiled like I'd complimented her. "I cleaned the bathroom. Hope that's okay?" It was kinda gross. I forced a smile and went to get dressed. A month in, Mallory was over almost daily. I got used to hearing the buzzer followed by her voice over the intercom before I even had time to answer. One morning, I took a longer shower than usual. When I stepped out, towel around my waist, I saw her sitting on the edge of the bed holding my phone. Her face was blank. I asked what she was doing. She looked up slowly and said, "I saw a name I didn't recognize. Just pocket curiosity, I guess." I took the phone back without answering. She had scrolled through my messages, including a group chat with coworkers and a few from my ex. Nothing flirty. Just a couple of old birthday messages and work chatter. Still, she looked like she'd caught me cheating. I said nothing. She started crying suddenly, saying she had trust issues, that she shouldn't have looked, that she was scared of losing people. I nodded, awkward, wrapped in a towel, water dripping on the floor. I told her it was okay. I didn't mean it. A week passed. We barely spoke for a day or two. Then she acted like nothing happened. I was half asleep one night, sometime past 2 a.m., when I felt something shift on the mattress. I opened my eyes and saw her standing above me. In her hands was a baseball bat. It was mine, kept by the door in case of emergencies. I sat up fast. She whispered, "I heard someone. I think someone broke in." I looked past her to the door. Still locked. Chain on. Deadbolt in place. No sound except for the whir of the fridge and my heart thudding like thunder. She stood there in the dark, barefoot, hair wild, the bat clutched too tightly. I told her to check the hallway light while I walked to the door. No signs of forced entry. No noise outside. I checked every room, tiny as the apartment was, and found nothing. She calmed only after I turned every light on. Still, she kept the bat beside her as we lay in bed again. I didn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling until sunrise. I made up my mind. I couldn't keep living like that. The next afternoon, I came home from work and found her already inside. She'd made tea and was rearranging something on the bookshelf. I told her we needed to talk. She gave me a long look and sat down slowly. I said we needed some space, that things were moving too fast, that I needed time alone. Her hands started to shake. Then I saw her reach for the bat leaning next to the couch. She didn't lift it, just wrapped her fingers around the handle. "Are you breaking up with me?" she asked. Her voice cracked halfway through the sentence. I stood near the doorway, trying to keep my voice even. I said I wasn't sure what this was, but it needed to pause. She stood up fast and started pacing, the bat swinging slightly in her grip. She wasn't aiming it, just holding it like a nervous habit. Still, I felt every nerve in my body go tight. I pulled my phone from my pocket and dialed 911, put it on speaker. The dispatcher answered and I said clearly, "I need help. My ex won't leave my apartment. She's holding a bat." Mallory froze. Then she started crying. Deep, choking sobs. She dropped the bat with a hollow clunk. She sat down on the floor, hugging her knees. By the time sirens echoed up the street, she hadn't moved. The officers knocked. I let them in, and they gently helped her up. She didn't argue, just asked if she could get her jacket. One officer stayed with her while the other took my statement in the kitchen. He suggested a restraining order. Said she hadn't done anything technically illegal, but the behavior was escalating. I agreed. That night, her Messenger profile disappeared. No more texts, no more memes, no sign of her name on any app. The table she sold me sat in the corner like a joke I no longer got. I avoided sitting at it. Ate dinner standing up again. I sold the table a few days later to a guy with a pickup. He haggled me down to half what I paid. I didn't care. I wanted it gone. I changed the locks the same afternoon. Had new keys made, tossed the old ones in a dumpster. Friends heard a version of the story. They teased me. "Don't buy furniture and fall in love, dude." I laughed with them, but not really. Now when I scroll listings online, I double-check profiles, photos, even sentence structure. I don't reply to anything with a smiley face too early. I keep my phone locked. And I never leave a bat near someone who might confuse love with permission. It happened the week I upgraded to a 4K screen. My old 55-inch still worked fine, no cracks or dead pixels, so I figured I'd sell it cheap just to get it out of the way. I listed it online Sunday night for $150. Within 2 hours, a guy named Daryl messaged me. He sounded polite, maybe even too polite. Said he was grateful for the opportunity, and asked if he could come by Tuesday evening around 7 p.m. to pick it up. I said sure. He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and thanked me again. No red flags. Tuesday came, and I had the old TV unplugged, wrapped in a blanket, and leaning by the door. I even carried it down from my third-floor apartment myself, because he said he didn't want to deal with stairs. I waited. 7 passed, then 8. I messaged him. No answer. At 9, I gave up, slid the TV back inside, and left it in the hallway. I figured he changed his mind. Not the first time someone flaked on a sale. I shrugged it off. Next morning, a guy from 2 neighborhoods over messaged me, offering a $130 cash if he could come by in the next hour. I work from home and had some downtime, so I said yes. He showed up in a dusty pickup with his teenage son, tested the screen, handed me the money, and drove off smiling. I deleted the listing and went back to work, thinking that was the end of it. 3 hours later, a message popped up from Daryl. No greeting this time, just, "So, I guess you just sold it to someone else without even telling me." I paused. Reread it. It didn't make much sense since he never showed or responded. I replied calmly, told him I waited but he hadn't come, so I assumed he wasn't interested. I expected he'd either apologize or disappear. Instead, he fired back. "You knew I was coming. You just gave it to someone else. Liar." I typed out a careful response, explaining again that he missed the agreed time and I needed the space cleared. I didn't argue or insult. I thought it would die down. But he kept going. Another message a few minutes later, then another, each more aggressive. I blocked him. A new message popped up under a different account with his same name. "You can block me all you want. Doesn't change what you did." I didn't answer. That night I went to bed thinking maybe that would be the end. It wasn't. The next day, more messages. Now it wasn't just insults. It was demands. "Honor our agreement," one said. "You owe me." I responded once more, short and direct. "You didn't show up. I waited. I sold it." I should have ignored him. He replied instantly with, "You think you're clever? You think I don't know where you live?" Then he sent an address. It wasn't mine, but it was close. About 4 houses down the block. I hadn't given him my full address, just a general intersection when we set up the pickup. That detail stuck with me. How close he got. The tone changed. Less angry, more focused. Like he'd made a decision. I stopped replying. Put my phone on silent. Notifications came through anyway. Ping after ping after ping. By late afternoon, it was like malware. Dozens of messages, each one shorter and sharper. Coward. "I'm outside. Come look." I didn't open the curtains. I sat on my couch, phone face down, trying to keep my breathing steady. Then quiet. No messages for a while. Just quiet. I started to feel like maybe it was over. I made dinner. Ate standing by the sink. Then the pounding started. Loud, fast, like someone was slamming their fist, not knocking. I froze. My door's solid wood with a small peephole. I stepped up to it slowly and looked out. Middle-aged man, gray hoodie, maybe late 40s, leaning close to the door and shouting, "Hey, I know you're in there. You think I'm playing?" He didn't look drunk, just pissed and locked in. The porch light lit up half his face, sweaty and red. He kept yelling my name over and over, sometimes tapping the glass with his keys, then going back to pounding. 30 minutes, maybe more. My neighbor upstairs opened his window at one point and asked what was going on. Daryl ignored him. Eventually, he walked back to the curb. I watched through the blinds as he got into a silver sedan and peeled out, tires screeching. The next morning, I ordered 2 cheap DIY security camera kits online and picked them up from a locker after lunch. Spent the evening setting them up, one over the front door, one facing the street from my kitchen window. They weren't fancy, but enough to record and stream. I wanted proof if he came back. Messages hadn't stopped. His account, still the same name, kept pushing these rambling paragraphs. Descriptions of my street, the corner shop, my neighbor's trash bins. One message listed 3 cars that usually parked near my place. He was watching, not guessing. I reported him on Marketplace, flagged the messages, but responses were automated. "Thanks for your report. We're reviewing." Nothing changed. That night, I spotted the sedan again. Gray, same dents on the rear bumper, same deep idle rumble. Parked directly across the street, lights off, engine still running. No one got out. It stayed for almost an hour, then slid away without headlights. The next night, same time, same spot. I didn't open blinds, just peeked from behind the curtain. The figure inside wasn't moving. I didn't sleep much. Around 3 a.m., I finally dozed off with the kitchen light on and my shoes still on. Slept like that for days. I stopped parking out front. left my car on a parallel street and used the back alley to come in. If he wanted to know my movements, I wouldn't make it easy. I kept my lights off in the living room and stayed quiet. Phone on silent again. Friday morning, I walked into the local station, brought screenshots, printed one of the photos I got from the camera. Blurry, but the license plate was legible. The officer at the desk flipped through the pages, then typed something slowly. He said they could send a patrol to drive past that night. No promises. But he took my report. Around 9 p.m., I was sitting on the floor behind my couch, just waiting. My cameras pinged motion. Headlights had swept the porch. Then I saw blue and red reflections bounce off the walls. They caught him. 2 cruisers parked tight behind the gray sedan. Flashlights bounced inside the car. I watched from the corner of the window. He didn't get out until they opened the door. I couldn't hear it, but I saw him yelling, arms moving, leaning forward with some papers in his hand. One officer pointed at my house, then gestured to the ground. Daryl kept shouting. One officer pulled out handcuffs but didn't use them. Eventually, they got him to calm down. The yelling turned into pacing. He pointed again and again at something in his car. Then he got back in and slammed the door. They didn't arrest him, just warned him, I guess. But they followed as he drove off. His taillights bounced over the cracked road. After that, he didn't come back. Within hours, his account was gone. Vanished from Marketplace. The messages disappeared with it. Not even in my blocked list. Like he never existed. I searched his name and found nothing. No listing history, no profile. The house was quiet again. I kept the cameras up. Even added a third above the alley gate. Every time that red LED blinked, I felt a little steadier. But I didn't let myself relax completely. I still sell stuff online now and then. Small things. But I never meet buyers at home. Always public spots. Gas stations with cameras. Grocery store parking lots. If someone won't agree, I don't sell. Simple. People think buying and selling is just about stuff. TVs, tools, phones. But some people are shopping for more than that. They're looking for a crack, a loose thread, something to pull. Boundaries are like warranties. Once you void them, replacements are hard to find. I made a promise to myself after Daryl. No more pickups from my door. No more full names or street names sent to strangers. Just first names and parking lots. I keep receipts and screenshots. Not for the deal, for the distance. I learned fast that some people treat a yes like a contract and a missed message like betrayal. They'll chase it, sometimes physically. So now I keep things simple. No promises, no trust without cameras. And I never, ever list my real address again. When I was 33, my work shifts started flipping between nights and days every couple of weeks. It messed with my sleep and made running errands awkward. I'd find myself wide awake at 3 a.m., browsing used furniture listings online because that was about all I had the energy for. One night I saw a posting for a $25 solid wood nightstand. It looked sturdy in the pictures, just some scuffs on the legs. The seller's name was Emily. Her replies were short but polite. She said she couldn't meet during the day because of a crazy schedule and asked if I could meet her early, like 5 a.m. She'd be near Lakeside Park, which was about a 20-minute drive from my apartment. It sounded rough, but I had just finished a night shift, and staying up an extra hour didn't seem too bad. Plus, I'd rather get it done before traffic picked up. I told her that worked, and she gave me the exact pin on the map, a public parking lot near the east entrance. Said she'd park a white van there and leave the back doors open so I could check out the nightstand. She made it sound casual, like a grab-and-go thing. I packed a thermos of coffee and some tie-down straps into the truck and hit the road. It was still pitch black outside, the kind of black that makes headlights feel useless beyond 10 feet. The streets were empty except for the occasional delivery van or a jogger in a reflective vest. As I pulled onto Lakeside Drive, I noticed how thick the fog was hugging the shoreline. It clung to the pavement in strips, breaking apart only when the truck pushed through. The lot was empty except for a white cargo van parked with its back facing the lake. Its engine was running, quiet but steady. The back doors were open, just like she said. I parked about 20 feet away and got out, leaving the truck running with the lights on. The glow from the headlights barely touched the van. I called out, "Hello? Emily?" and walked slowly toward it, scanning the area. Nothing moved. There were no other cars, no joggers, not even ducks. Just fog and the sound of the van's low idle. I approached the van cautiously. Inside there was no nightstand. Just a neatly folded blue tarp resting on the floor near the back. No tools, no clutter, no signs anyone was getting ready to move furniture. Just the tarp. My truck's headlights flicked over something to the left, just past the tree line. I turned my head and froze. Two human shapes stood among the pine trees, not far from the gravel path that ran along the edge of the lot. They weren't moving. No walking, no fidgeting. Just standing there side by side, facing toward the lot but not clearly looking at anything. I stood there, staring, waiting for one of them to wave or step forward. Nothing. They stayed completely still, half shrouded in fog, maybe 25 feet away. I felt a pulse of something cold run through me. I backed up a little and pulled out my phone. I texted Emily, "I'm here. Is that you by the trees?" A few seconds passed, and I saw the typing bubble. 3 dots. Then they vanished. Nothing else came through. I stood still, holding my phone, trying to figure out what the hell was going on. That's when I heard it. Just barely. A sharp click. Like metal on metal. Not loud, not aggressive. Just quick. Maybe a lighter. The breeze picked up slightly and carried the smell of wet leaves. I felt goosebumps crawl across my arms, even though the air was still heavy and warm. I stepped back toward my truck and kept my eyes on the silhouettes. I reversed slowly, keeping my eyes locked on the two figures. Gravel crunched under the tires, echoing louder than it should have in the quiet lot. One of the silhouettes took a step forward, hands slipping into their jacket pocket. The other one moved, circling behind the van, walking low and quick like they didn't want to be seen. I kept my foot over the brake, trying to look both ways. The mist had thickened just enough to blur the rear camera on my dash. My pulse pounded in my neck. I tapped the brake twice, checked my mirrors, and saw the faint shape of the second person crossing into my blind spot. That was it. I dropped the truck into drive and slammed the pedal. The engine growled. My tires threw gravel as I turned sharply, nearly brushing a curb on the way out. I didn't look back. The parking lot disappeared behind me. I turned onto the main road without signaling, half skidding through the turn. My hands were clenched so tight on the wheel they hurt. About a mile out, my phone buzzed in the console tray. I grabbed it at the next red light. One new text. Same thread. The message said, "Smart move, buddy." I didn't finish reading it before the light turned green. My stomach sank into something cold and sour. I didn't go home. I couldn't. I took the highway south, heading toward town. The nearest gas station was just off the first exit. It had bright floodlights and 2 parked semis at the pumps. I pulled up near the entrance and left the engine running. Inside, I asked the cashier if I could use the landline. When he asked why, I just said, "Someone tried to rob me at the park." He handed it over without another word. I called the sheriff's department and told them everything. What I saw, what I didn't see, what I smelled, what I heard. The dispatcher stayed calm, but asked me the same question twice. "Did you see any weapons?" I told her no, but their posture, their movement, it wasn't random. She told me to stay put and a deputy would meet me there. They arrived within 15 minutes, 2 cruisers. One took my statement while the other went straight to the park. Dawn was breaking by then, just enough light to peel the fog from the trees. I sat on a curb with my coffee, now cold, and went through the messages again. Emily's account still showed our thread, but her avatar wasn't a woman anymore. It was a stock photo of a golden retriever puppy in a teacup. By 7 a.m., they'd checked the entire lot. The van was gone. So were the people. All they found were a few cigarette butts near the tree line and faint tire tracks pulling away from the grass. No furniture, no name under Emily, no trace of her number in any known local databases. One deputy pointed out the license plate had been spray-painted black, just enough to keep numbers from showing clearly. Another said the back doors of the van were opened in a way that looked more like bait than business. The report was filed, and I was free to go. They said they'd follow up, but I knew it was the kind of thing that just fell into a gray area. No crime actually committed, no victim, nothing stolen. Just enough wrong to stay with you. Days passed. I kept checking the listing site. The post vanished. I reverse searched the image from the ad. It belonged to a furniture store in Idaho. Emily never existed. Other reports came in, posts online from people in nearby towns who'd seen the same van or had similar meetups go strange. One guy said he showed up to buy a bike and got chased back to his car. Another woman said she never got out. She saw the van and just kept driving. All the stories led nowhere. Different counties, different jurisdictions, no pattern anyone could prove. Work went back to normal. I stuck to daylight hours. I bought a nightstand from IKEA. Not even real wood, but I didn't care anymore. Now, I still pass that lake sometimes during deliveries. The surface always looks calm, flat, like a mirror. First light hits it just right, and the trees cast long shadows over the lot. I don't stop there. Every time I drive by, I catch myself tightening my grip on the steering wheel without thinking. It's automatic. I think about that message. Smart move, buddy. I think about how long they watched. If I'd gone inside that van. If I'd waited. If I'd tried to be polite and call out again. Good furniture doesn't need darkness to change hands. If someone insists on dawn over daylight, let them enjoy it alone. Some bargains only bloom in the dark and die when the sun comes up. Last summer, after months of strict budgeting and cutting out almost every fun expense, my girlfriend and I finally decided to treat ourselves. What we wanted more than anything was a night of live music, real speakers, real crowds, actual noise, not another playlist or live stream. We both liked country music enough, and when I spotted 2 tickets to a show on Facebook Marketplace, it felt like a win. Floor seats. Face value. The seller, someone named Vic, seemed fine. Had a friendly tone, used full sentences, didn't beg. Said he was only selling because his brother bailed. He insisted we go through PayPal Goods and Services, which had buyer protection. That made me feel safer, so I agreed. He offered to meet outside the venue. We showed up early, just to be sure there were no last-minute problems. Vic was already there, wearing a faded ball cap and cargo shorts. He looked average, smiled, handed over the tickets, and made small talk about the opening acts. We scanned the tickets at the gate. No issues. They beeped green. We were in. I turned around to thank him, and he gave a quick wave, then walked off down the sidewalk, phone already in hand. I figured that was the end of it. My girlfriend and I grabbed overpriced beers and some nachos, laughing about how long it had been since we'd done anything like this. It felt like one of those rare nights where everything lined up. No work stress, no arguments, no planning. Just music. We got to our seats as the lights dimmed. First strum of the guitar. Crowd roared. We were just settling in, bodies relaxing into the beat, when Vic slid into the empty seat beside us, holding a tub of popcorn. He leaned over and said, almost shouting over the bass, "Couldn't resist. Had to grab one more for myself." I smiled out of reflex, gave a polite laugh. My girlfriend didn't. Her mouth tightened a little. Vic started digging into the popcorn like he'd been with us the whole time. I turned back to the stage, hoping it was a weird coincidence, that he'd bought the seat on his own and it just happened to be next to us. That would have been weird, but not threatening. But Vic didn't just sit quietly. Every few minutes, he leaned over with something. Asked if we were from around here. Asked where we worked. Tried to guess my girlfriend's name. When the lights flared for a ballad, he commented on her necklace. Said it looked expensive. I nodded vaguely and tried to block him out with the music, but it was harder than it should have been. He talked during nearly every song, like he didn't care what was happening on stage. My girlfriend didn't say anything out loud, but I saw her scrolling on her phone mid-set. She looked at me, then at him, eyebrows raised. When intermission hit, we tried to lose him. Walked out toward the food stands, made a beeline for the merch tables. But Vic came right along, popcorn still half full. He kept talking, asking if we had pets, saying he used to have a dog that hated country music. Then he asked if we were staying in the city overnight or heading home. I turned and said, "We're just looking around." He nodded and smiled like that answered his question. When we bought matching tour shirts, he asked if we wanted a photo. I said no. We were good. We finally ducked into the bathroom line just to get away for a second. My girlfriend waited for the women's line, and I leaned against the wall. Vic walked past me, still munching on popcorn, and said, "This is fun, man. You guys are good people." I didn't answer. After the show, we exited fast, cutting through a side gate near the smoking area. I didn't see Vic again. We Ubered home, silent most of the ride. My girlfriend looked out the window the whole time. I told her I'd message him later to set a boundary. That night, I sent a short message on Messenger. Said something like, "Hey man, appreciate the tickets, but just a heads up, tonight was a little much. Hope you had fun, but we'd prefer some space going forward." He replied 20 minutes later with, "No problem, heart emoji, you guys are amazing." I blocked him right after that. Instagram, blocked. Messenger, blocked. Didn't check Facebook, but figured that covered it. We felt better the next morning. Laughed a little about it. Told ourselves he was probably just socially weird, not dangerous. But 2 nights later, I was locking up before bed and saw the notification. Saturday afternoon, I noticed a pickup idling across the street from my duplex. The engine stayed running too long to be someone lost or just parking. I stepped to the window. It was Vic. He stepped out slowly, holding something in one hand, a manila envelope. In the other hand, he had a plastic sleeve with what looked like more tickets. I froze. He started walking up the drive like he'd done it before. Casual, like we'd planned this. Waving the envelope like it was a delivery. I didn't open the door. I opened the window beside it and shouted, "You need to leave, right now. I'll call the police." He stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, his face twisted like he didn't understand. "But we're friends now," he said. His voice cracked a little, and I swear his eyes looked wet. Like he was confused, maybe even hurt. I said it again, louder this time. "I will call the police." He didn't argue. He placed the envelope on the top step, gave a little nod, and backed away, eyes still on the window. Got in the truck, reversed down the street without turning around. Never sped, never peeled out, just drove off. I didn't touch the envelope for a while. I waited until he was gone, locked the door again, and only then stepped out to grab it with a paper towel. Inside were 2 tickets to another concert. Bigger venue. A different genre entirely. Something I knew my girlfriend hated. Folded between the tickets was a short note, blocky handwriting on lined paper. "Use these with me." I didn't wait. Filed a harassment report the next morning. Told the officer everything. Showed them screenshots, message history, the note, the envelope. They took it seriously. Said they'd call him directly. That afternoon, they told me Vic had been contacted and promised to leave me alone. They couldn't arrest him for a note, but the message was sent. The next few days were quiet. I checked the locks twice each night. No pickups on the street. No messages from new numbers. My girlfriend didn't say much about it. She just made sure every curtain was shut before dark. We kept our routines tight. Work, home, errands together. Then, early Thursday morning, just past 3 a.m., the motion sensor on our porch lights triggered. Bright white glare lit the steps, flashing through the window. I jumped up, grabbed my phone, checked the camera feed. Nothing but the porch. No car, no figure, just the bushes and railing. But right before the light faded out, I caught it. A shadow moving away, just barely visible in the corner of the frame. Someone had been there and slipped out of view. I ran the clip back 3 times. There was no doubt. It was a person. Just far enough back that I couldn't see a face. Just close enough to set off the motion sensor. I called the non-emergency line. Same officer from the first report took the call. Said if I didn't catch a plate or clear face, there wasn't much more they could do. I asked about Vic's number. They tried it again. Out of service. Disconnected. We didn't sleep that night. By morning, we made a plan. First, we sold the extra tickets online. This time, through a platform with secure exchange at a designated meetup zone. Lit, staffed, monitored. I didn't want anything in my house with his name attached. Anything that made it look like we owed him a reply. Next, I upgraded our locks. Added a second deadbolt, smart cameras with audio alerts, and sensors on every door and window. I checked every setting. Set auto lock on every device we had. I went into the settings of every app I'd used to talk to him. PayPal, Messenger, even the ticket marketplace. Turned off sharing. Scrubbed my profile clean. Changed my username where I could. Because here's what I learned. Digital footprints walk straight to your door if you're not careful. When you buy or sell something online, it doesn't stop at a receipt. It prints maps. It shares names. Sometimes it even shows your street on the confirmation screen. Vic didn't find us by accident. PayPal had a default setting that shared the shipping address. I didn't notice until it was too late. Next time I buy anything from a stranger, we're meeting under stadium lights. In line. In public. With cameras and people all around. Not in any parking lot. Not outside my place. Not under some idea of friendliness. Because some strangers don't think a sale ends at the handoff. They think it's the start of something else. Something permanent. And people like that, once they have your name, your street, your habits, they don't always knock. Sometimes they just stand and wait, in the dark, just outside the frame. 2 months ago, my 16-year-old sister finally got her learner's permit. She'd been begging to start driving for over a year, and after saving for months, I decided to help her out. My fiancé, Erin, and I had been scrolling through listings for a cheap but reliable used car. Most were rusted junk or sketchy no-title deals. But then we saw a 2014 Nissan Sentra listed for $2,100. The mileage wasn't too bad, and the photos looked clean. The seller's ad was short, said the car was in good condition and ready to go. No red flags, just said to bring cash, and that the paperwork was inside the house because it was too windy outside. The address was about an hour outside town, out near the edge of the county. We left just after sunrise. The sun was low, casting long shadows over the flat, open fields. As we turned onto a gravel road, the sound of the tires popping over loose stones was the only noise besides the hum of the engine. No other cars out here, no houses nearby. The place came into view slowly, one of those ranch-style homes that looked like no one had lived in it full-time for years. The siding was faded, a few boards on the porch were warped, and weeds choked out what used to be a front lawn. A cracked driveway split off from the gravel, leading up to where the car sat parked. It was the same silver Nissan from the pictures. We parked beside it. The car looked okay. Flat tire, but nothing major. Windows a little dusty. Erin said it gave her a weird feeling, but I figured the guy was just flipping an estate car or something. The property looked like it had been cleared out in a hurry. Maybe someone died. Still, the price was right, and my sister would be thrilled. I told Erin to wait in the truck and grabbed the cash envelope and a printed copy of the car's title the guy had sent over email. I tapped on the front door, which creaked open a few inches from the touch. The inside smelled like mildew and old cigarette smoke. A lot of the furniture was gone. Some old frames were stacked against the wall. Hallways were stripped of carpet, and drywall was patched over but still unpainted. I took a step inside and called out, "Hello?" A man's voice yelled from deeper in the house, somewhere down the hall, telling me to come back here. I hesitated, but I figured maybe he was in a back room grabbing the bill of sale. I stepped through a doorway with a crooked hinge, the door half hanging off. The floor creaked under my shoes. The hallway bent left, and I turned the corner just as something slammed into the back of my head. It wasn't sharp, just a blunt, hard impact that made everything flash. My knees buckled and I hit the floor. For a second I saw stars, and then I heard two voices. One said, "Get the cash," and the other said, "Where's the key folder?" I'd dropped the envelope when I fell, but I'd stuffed the printed title copy into my hoodie pocket. I reached for the wall to try and stand, but one of them grabbed my leg and started dragging me backward down the hallway. My ears were still ringing. I twisted and kicked, panic kicking in. One foot caught something solid, felt like a shin. A voice shouted, "Fuck!" and I heard someone stumble. I stumbled out into the daylight, barely seeing through the blood dripping into my eyes. My vision swam, everything sideways, but I caught a glimpse of Erin. She was still in the truck, engine idling, mouth open in shock. I screamed something. I don't even remember what, but she slammed her foot down. The truck lurched forward, tires grinding across gravel. I barely managed to get one foot into the bed as she closed the gap. I hauled myself in and shouted, "Drive!" as loud as my throat would allow. Behind me, the front door exploded open. 4 men spilled out, one wielding a crowbar, 2 more looking like they'd come from some kind of demo crew. Sleeves torn off, jeans stained, boots thudding on the porch. Erin didn't stop. She spun the wheel hard, fishtailing as the rear tires kicked up a cloud of dust and rock. I bounced in the truck bed, grabbing the sides for balance. One guy hurled something, a wrench maybe, but it skidded off the back window with a loud clink and fell away. We shot down the gravel road, engine whining. Then, in the mirror, I saw it. A dark SUV parked behind the house roared to life and started backing out fast. I screamed, trying to get Aaron to hear me over the engine. But then, the SUV didn't chase us. It turned toward the side of the house and gunned it up the grass toward the driveway. Then I saw it. My truck keys. Still in the ignition of my old pickup parked near the Nissan. We'd been so focused on the car, I didn't think about the fact I left my own keys dangling in plain sight. The SUV skidded to a stop next to it. One of the guys hopped out, yanked the door open, and slid behind the wheel. The other three piled in. Within seconds, my truck was screaming down the opposite side of the lot, dust trails rising behind it as they made their getaway. We didn't look back again until we hit pavement. Aaron flew onto the highway ramp without checking for traffic, hands white-knuckling the wheel. She was crying, gasping for breath. I kept pressing my hoodie against the back of my head. My fingers were sticky with blood, and everything still felt hazy. We didn't speak until we reached the ER. At the hospital, they took me in fast. Aaron had already called the police. A doctor glued the scalp wound and gave me a tetanus shot. Said I was lucky it hadn't cracked my skull. Deputies showed up an hour later, taking our statements. They nodded a lot but didn't seem surprised. One of them mentioned similar cases. Too similar. He said they'd go check the property, but warned us not to get our hopes up. A few days later, they found my truck. Or what was left of it. Just pieces, mostly bumper and a bit of the bed, scattered down in a ditch off a back road 2 counties away. Nothing inside. No prints, no plates. Whoever took it had known what they were doing. They dumped it fast and stripped it faster. Vin got flagged across state lines in Missouri a week later, but it went cold right after. Insurance called it a total loss. Their report said damage beyond recovery, and blamed me for leaving the keys. The original listing for the Nissan? Gone before I got out of the hospital. Pulled offline, phone number disconnected, profile deleted. I called Craigslist, but they said it was a third-party post. No way to trace it. They told me not to meet sellers at private homes anymore. Like that hadn't already been carved into my brain. My sister still takes the bus to school. Every time I see her walking to the stop, backpack bouncing against her shoulders, I feel my stomach twist. Erin still has nightmares, though she doesn't admit it out loud. I check every corner when I enter a house now, no matter where I am. I can't walk into anything unfurnished without my hands curling into fists. Something about bare drywall and silence just puts me on edge. A cheap car taught us an expensive lesson. Next time, I'll bring any deal to a Walmart lot. Broad daylight. People walking by. Security cams overhead. I don't care if the price is 3 times higher. It's not worth my blood on the floor of a rotting hallway. Never follow a stranger inside. Not for paperwork, not for price, not for anything. Some people online aren't selling cars. They're looking for something else. Whatever they can take. Maybe it's your wallet. Maybe it's your ride. Maybe it's something you won't notice missing until the silence hits later that night. Safety doesn't come with a car. You bring it yourself.